Megacity 1. 800 million people living in the ruin of the old world in the megastructures of the new one. Only one thing fighting for order in the chaos. Judges.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Mugwump Tower, this is Albatross 1-3, requesting permission to land. Over.
I don't need a computer to tell me how to land a damn airplane.
6.
Heads-up display, check.
5,
Lasers, check.
4,
Particle beam, check.
3,
Proton bolts, check.
2,
Chair control, check.
1.
Let's do it.
Broadcasting from a secret underground location somewhere in Mos Eisley. This is the Docking Bay 77 podcast. Make yourself comfortable. The show is about to start. Hello and welcome to the Docking Bay 77 podcast. I am your host, Judge Johnson. We are discussing a fantastic comic book adaptation film. Let me introduce the judges this evening. We have Judge Wright. How are you?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm good. And Judge Blakely, how are you doing?
Fantastic. So excited to talk about this movie.
Me too. We are discussing the 2012 film, action film, comic book adaptation, all kinds of wonderful descriptions. Dredd.
800 million people living in the ruin of the old world. Only one thing fighting for order in the chaos. Judges.
This drug's like nothing I've ever seen.
If we play this right, we can take the whole city.
Mama's controlling all the slow-mo production and distribution.
Rookie, you ready?
Yeah.
You look ready.
Fire!
Law is not the law. I'm the law.
I'm going in for it.
How do you plead? Defense noted.
Dredd 3D.
Herbs were uncooperative.
Rated R. In theaters September 21st.
Before we get into the meat of the episode, we do have some feedbacks from some previous episodes. From our 1990s film episodes, so top 7, Jason Coslet reached out with his list in no particular order. We have True Romance, Tombstone, Thunderheart, Medicine Man, LA Confidential, From Dusk Till Dawn, and The Crow. Pretty solid list there.
That's a good. I had Tombstone on my list for a while. That's a good one.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about Tombstone. And the only reason LA Confidential wasn't on my list was because we already did an episode on it. Def Dave, David Wright, his list includes Hunt for Red October, The X-Files, Blade, That Thing You Do, T2 Judgment Day, Tombstone, and The Matrix. Pretty solid list there as well. Nice. Jason Colvin from the Surely You Can't Be Serious podcast has his list. Includes Dumb and Dumber, Fight Club, T2, Forrest Gump, Seven, Titanic, and The Shawshank Redemption. Yeah. So like I said, the 90s, fantastic decade for film. And so some 3 solid lists right there. You have any comments on any of our episodes, you want to share a top 7 or whatever, reach out on social media with it, and we'll share it on social media and also read it on an episode. So thank you to those guys for sharing. Now on to Dredd. Some opening thoughts. Andrew, you're first.
I love that this movie is really nothing special in this guy's life. Like it's a really simple story. You know, they didn't try to do an origin. They didn't try to do some groundbreaking. It's, just a day in the life of being a judge. And I think it's really cool. It's an interesting way to do it. And they just did it really well.
Yes, they did very well. Very well. All right. How about you, John?
Well, it's not Stallone. So
yes,
I am the law.
Anyway,
yeah, if you saw that one, with Stallone and expected something similar with this one, boy, were you sadly disappointed. While the rest of us were so greatly pleased.
Gee, I think Andrew feels targeted right now.
No, I'm not going to pretend that the first one was a great movie. I love
Okay.
the original, like the Stallone one, but it's a silly joke. Like let's call it what it is.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you can clearly tell that it was not meant for somebody like Stallone to personify this character.
He looked good in the helmet, but that was it. That once they took the helmet off and let him talk, it was like, it's over.
But I mean, Urban, chef's kiss. I mean, what can you say about the dude?
Right.
And like Andrew said, it is really interesting that there's no origin. There's very little background given. It's the day in the life of Dredd and Anderson. I would actually argue it's more like day in the life of Anderson than it is Dredd.
Right.
Dredd is almost a supporting character at times throughout his whole movie. But yeah, it's over the top, but deeply rooted violence and gore that this title has to have in order to be effective.
Right. Agreed.
And no Rob Schneider too. Let's just
there's that's always a plus.
Oh my God. Yeah. So going into this, I had seen the one with Stallone. So when I heard they were making this one, and when we knew Carl Urban was going to be in it, and even when you started to see what they were doing, I'm like, oh, this looks so much better. They changed the uniform, but they kept the helmet. It's a grittier, more realistic look of the world that that takes place in. Now, I was excited to see it now, story time, because John and I saw it in the theater together. The second week it was out because we knew it wasn't going to make it a third week. So
yeah,
we went like on a Tuesday or Wednesday night to the Middletown Theater that's no longer there, or it's there in structure, but it's closed.
Is it?
Yeah, it recently closed because somebody bought it and tried to make it go, and whatever. Anyway, so it was just the two of us in the theater, so we, at first we were trying to be quiet, then we realized we're the only ones in there. So we're just like talking and enjoying the movie. And I got to admit, I kind of wish I would have seen it in 3D, because there's some sequences that I'm sure felt really awesome in 3D, but I remember seeing it and I remember how much fun it was, and nobody saw it. Lionsgate didn't know how to promote it. They didn't know what to do with it. And, it kind of tanked the box office. And when it hit DVD, I remember buying a copy like first week, loved it. And I kept talking about it at work with people that hadn't seen it. I brought in my copy and let them borrow it. I told them, trust me, this is probably one of the best action movies of the year. They're like, oh, no, it's not. Every single one of them, the next day they brought it back, oh my God, you were right. That was so good. I'm like, yes, it was. So, and I remember watching where it ranked on Amazon sales and stuff like that it was surging and all this sort of stuff. So it's such a sad situation when a fun movie just kind of gets lost. And, you look back at that year and, you had the Avengers, which obviously was probably the best one of that year, pretty close. The Hunger Games, fantastic, but more of a drama, not really an action movie. John Carter, it tanked, but more sci-fi and still a pretty good movie, but whatever. You had The Dark Knight Rises. Okay, fine. Not really going to argue that, but, except for maybe it was a little too long. Dredd was one of those who just got lost in all the mix and nobody saw it. And it sucks because this film embraced the source material, gave us interesting characters. It's absolutely beautiful and gritty all at the same time. And you're right. It's just a day in the life of Dredd and somewhat of an origin story for Anderson, to John's point that it's more about her. So it never gets old. It's fun. It's amazing how in a movie that's so bloody, that's so dark, that there's some truly beautiful shots too. So I think just the rainbow colors and the smoke and everything, just there's so many beautiful touches in it, and it works too. So
it's weird to me that they struggled to market this too, because it came out only 6 or 7 months after The Raid, which blew up. I feel like everybody was talking about that movie, and there's a lot of parallels,
there is
in story and in style and things like that. So, when you see that success, I'm surprised studios didn't kind of latch onto that and be like, this is the next tower fight movie.
Right. Yeah. I actually remember I didn't see the Raid until like a year later, and yeah, there's definitely similarities. And the Raid is a great movie too, but I still like this one more. It's the characters are more fresh for me in this one, but yeah, it kind of, I remember seeing the 30-second TV spots and stuff, and they didn't really tell you anything, and you just kind of had to know what it was. And some people thought it was like a sequel to the other one, or that's just they didn't. Lionsgate kind of dropped the ball on the marketing for sure, and it suffered, and it still to this day deserves a sequel. Whatever, moving on.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on.
That's the fact, Jack! That's the fact, Jack!
It's time for That's the Fact, Jack. These are some film facts and some source material on our character, Judge Dredd. So, John, what do you have on our source material?
Judge Joseph Dredd is a fictional character created by writer John Wagner and artist Carlos Esquerra. He first appeared in the second issue of the British weekly anthology comic 2000 AD in 1977. So old Dredd's been around for a while. When comics editor Pat Mills was developing 2000 AD, he brought in his former writing partner Wagner to develop characters. Wagner had written a Dirty Harry style tough cop story called One-Eyed Jack for Valiant Publishing, and suggested a character who took that concept to its next logical extreme. He said, they had success from One-Eyed Jack, but they wanted a really hard, tough cop. Mills had developed a horror strip called Judge Dredd, named after the stage band of a British ska and reggae artist, Alexander Minto Hughes, before abandoning the idea as unsuitable. But the name and the spelling remained, only to be modified to Dredd as opposed to D-R-E, at the suggestion of sub-editor Kevin Gosnell, and it was adapted by Wagner. Dredd's entire face is never shown in the comic. This began as an unofficial guideline, but soon became a rule. As John Wagner explained, it sums up the facelessness of justice. Justice has no soul, so it isn't necessary for the readers to see Dredd's face, and I don't want you to.
I found a strip actually when I was looking for this where they showed his face and there was a censored bar over it.
Yes. He does appear a couple times throughout the series without helmet, but they have some sort of like holographic projector that he appears as another character. So he's like undercover Dredd. The setting of Dredd is a dystopian future Earth damaged by a series of international conflicts. Much of the planet has become a radioactive wasteland, and so populations have aggregated in enormous settlements known as megacities. The story is centered on the megapolis of Megacity 1 on the east coast of North America. Within Megacity 1, an extensive automation has rendered the majority of the population unemployed. As a consequence, the general population is prone to embracing any fashion or craze they encounter, as we see in the movie with the invention of slow-mo. Megacity 1 is surrounded by the inhospitable Cursed Earth, a radioactive desert populated by outlaws and mutants. Much of the remaining world's geography is somewhat vague, although other megacities are visited in the book.
Very good. Yeah, I just picked up a reprinting of Judge Dredd Apocalypse War. So yeah, I'm trying to add to my collection.
Nice.
And for those, I'll put it on social media, but I also just recently picked up.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, at a toy store up in Columbus at a recent trip. So
yeah, I will say I never got like super into the Judge Dredd storylines, but the artwork in them is amazing.
Oh yeah,
I absolutely love it.
One of the big names to come out of the Dredd world is Simon Beasley. And
yeah,
a lot of people are familiar with his work, ultra hyper detailed, really over the top musculature and stuff like that. Very, very cool stuff. I, like you, Andrew, I never got into the comic too much. I think the only Dredd comics I probably have at home are when he meets Batman. And I think there's a Dredd versus Predator that's out there.
Interesting.
Those are about the only two I have.
Yeah, there's a good documentary on the Blu-ray that I have. Mark Millar also worked for 2000 AD. He actually worked on the story for a while before he went off on his own. He's interviewed in that as well. So yeah, that's worth checking out as well. Yeah, it's like many of us. I got into Dredd because of Anthrax, and I happen to be wearing my Anthrax Judge Dredd T-shirt right now because
Nice.
I'm on topic. All right, very cool. Andrew, some film facts.
All right. So Alex Garland, who I think is a household name by this point, but he began working on the Judge Dredd script in 2006 after he finished writing Sunshine, which ended up being directed by Danny Boyle.
Right.
Fantastic movie. Love that one. His first couple iterations didn't have anything to do with the story we see today. His first story, he was going to be fighting Judge Death, which sounds like an awesome story, and I would love to see.
Right.
And realized he maybe needed to take it down a little bit, ground it a little bit more. And he looked at a couple other storylines, the Democracy run and the Origins run of Judge Dredd, before he realized, we just want kind of a snapshot of the life. So DNA Films produced it on a meager $45 million budget. They decided to film the whole thing in digital 3D with only a few shots filmed in 2D that they made 3D in post. The slow motion scenes, they used a specialized Phantom Flex camera that captured 4,000 frames a second in 3D.
Yes.
They opted to film in Johannesburg and Cape Town, South Africa, because of their tight budget. And though it ended up going to Pete Travis, one of the early directing choices was Duncan Jones. And at the time of this, he would have only made Moon, which is another sci-fi movie I absolutely love.
Right.
And it's wild to picture him going from that to such a hyper-violent movie.
Oh, yeah. Very true.
So it was filmed in 2010. The creator, John Wagner, was on set, as well as Garland, to give a lot of insight and input. Interestingly, Carl Urban said whenever he needed direction, he actually went to Garland and not Travis, which that'll come back a little bit later here. It filmed for 13 weeks, using largely night shooting and obviously stretching small intimate scenes to look like, or small intimate set pieces to look like much, much larger ones. And then during post-production is actually where it gets real interesting, because there was so many creative differences between Travis and the studio that the LA Times reported Travis was actually locked out of his own editing. He actually was not allowed to edit. So Alex Garland stepped in and actually edited the movie.
Really?
Because at the time he was a producer as well as the writer. So he pushed to get his name added as co-director. There was some feuding back and forth, and eventually Travis and Garland came forward together and released a statement saying, like, it's a bit unorthodox, but Travis is going to maintain directorial credit, but, with heavy involvement from Garland, which is especially interesting because Carl Urban has publicly said many times this should be Alex Garland's directorial debut.
Wow.
But it was released in 2012 to, as we've discussed, underwhelming box office numbers, but no sequels likely in the works.
Yeah, that's just not right. I will say that I did read, I didn't dig too far into the story, but Alex Garland did say that he probably would not do another Dredd film, which bums me out. If you haven't yet, check out his recent film, Civil War. It's dark and beautiful all at the same time, like this one kind of is too. But that's a good flick to check out as well. Awesome. Yeah, it's just sometimes good movies just miss, and that really sucks.
Yep. Carl Urban's still down though. He still says today when he gets asked, he'd absolutely do a Judge.
Oh yeah,
Dredd too. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I know. And he just, it's funny if you look at his filmography before this, he didn't do a whole lot. I mean, obviously he was in the Lord of the Rings and stuff like that, but he was such a perfect choice, to fit in the helmet. And this, he just does the attitudes so well,
permanent frown.
Yes.
Yeah. I read he stayed in character throughout takes.
Yeah.
So, and he always, while he was on set, he always spoke in the American accent and kept the scowl. And he vowed to never remove the helmet. If they were to ever make a sequel, he's vowed the helmet is never coming off.
I love that. It'd be easy to stay in character. You don't really have to talk much.
That's right. You really don't. All right, cool. Let's move on.
That was totally wicked.
It's time for That Was Totally Wicked. These are things we love about the film. So, John, something you love about Dredd.
Oh, man. We've already touched on it in the intros, but especially with the shots when someone is under the effects of slow-mo.
Yes.
The school scene in particular, where they raid or it's not the school scene, but they raid the distribution house.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, right. Yeah. They're all.
God.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, he puts a bullet through a guy's cheek, and you see it in slow-mo. They shoot the fat guy, and you see like the belly ripple.
Yeah,
from
well, it's like
gunshot.
the pressure from the explosion in the
Yes.
door. It's like it just is.
Yeah, they use compressed air guns on it, which just like you really feel it. It's just so. Oh, I love it. It's like a nature documentary.
I mean, I watch a lot of violent stuff, which says something about my psyche. But I said it when we were reviewing Green Street Hooligans. There's something, if violence is shot in a very particular way, there's this like raw beauty to it. And the action sequences and stuff in this film, they're violent as hell, but there's this beauty to them. And like I said, the story wouldn't exist or wouldn't translate right if Dredd punched a guy and knocked him out. No, he's got to shoot the guy. He's
got to use a lawgiver. Come on now.
Exactly. And I mean, I do appreciate the fact that my history or my knowledge of the character is limited, but they stayed very true to what I understand the character to be.
Yeah, I agree. The slow-mo section, you're absolutely right. The way they did any time they used that, it was just to such great means and such great ends, because it's just the audio changes, the visuals, especially in the opening scene during the chase scene with the three guys in the van, it's just done so well. And at the end when he throws her out of her room and she falls all that way, and just, oh my God, it's like I said before, it's gritty and dirty and disgusting, but yet you have rainbows inside the smoke. It's just the choices they made were just fantastic, and it's so good. So good.
Oh yeah.
All right, Andrew, something you love about the film?
I love the way they balanced such a boring character on paper. I think that it's hard to tell a story where your character is rigid and unmoving and doesn't really grow, has no character arc, and is sort of representative of this militarized police state, and you make him your protagonist. Like that as a story just doesn't make sense. It shouldn't translate well to film. So the fact that they were able to balance that and give him this sense of fairness, I guess, like his growth is very, very small. It's infinitesimal, but there is growth,
Yeah.
And I love they were able to do that. And there are little scenes like with the kids, they pull the gun on him and he says, you can leave in a body bag or a juvenile ISO cube. It makes a difference to me. But when given the opportunity, he still stuns them as opposed to shoots them because they're kids.
Right.
And there's this level of like his hard line will kill anything, but also tries to make right decisions. Or, with the vagrant in the beginning, he's drawn a pretty hard line on this guy. But at the same time, he gives him the opportunity. He says, just don't be here when we get back.
Right.
So I like that they have this character that is so rigid and robotic, but also found a way to make him slightly relatable. That's a difficult tightrope to walk.
Yeah. Well, especially at the end when Anderson lets the techie go, and she's like, I'm allowed to make the judgment, dispense justice as I see it. And he was a victim. He wasn't a perp. So I dispense justice. And he there's a, even though you can only see his chin and his mouth, there's a definite pause and expression reacting to what she said. Like, all right, yeah, she's got a point, So,
and that's Carl Urban being we've learned he is now, but at the time, obviously he said he wasn't super fan. That's why he's so amazing. He can do so much with so little.
Yep. Agreed. So saying that, like, obviously our main character does not have much of an arc. I particularly love Anderson's story arc, because, you start off and she's a mutant. And at the very beginning, she's super nervous, and she's making little mistakes. Like, he's like, what's the, judgment? And she says, he goes, don't tell me, tell Central.
Yeah.
And so just little things like that. And then at the end, she's just like, let's finish this. And he's like, are you ready? She goes, yeah. He goes, you look ready, which is the exact opposite of how the very first.
I love that callback. Yeah. Such a good moment.
Yeah. And she knows that she failed. She knows that she's not going to make it, but yet she still does what she thinks is right. And, Olivia Thirlby is just amazing anyway. And she proved it yet again. And such a different character than we see her from, prior, like in Juno. It's just such a different.
It's a wild swing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and she does a great job. So,
I really loved her casting because you see her at the beginning and she's, they say she's 21, but she looks like a kid. She's so small, especially standing next to Carl Urban. Like this, like sweet little innocent thing going in there, and then she's a badass.
Oh yeah, like later when
cool.
Well, when she messes with Kay's mind to get the information out of it, and he ends up pissing on the floor because she totally fucked with his brain. It was great.
Yeah,
she's like,
I don't know if you caught this also when they're playing the mind games, she plants the mental image of him grabbing her gun.
Oh, okay.
She knows what's going to happen to him when he does it.
Yeah.
Oh. I didn't even notice.
Yeah,
that.
there's a shot where he has the gun and tries to shoot her, and then she says, hurting me in your brain doesn't really do anything to me. But yeah, then later, that's another great scene because all of us that know what's going to happen because at the very beginning, it's when Judd grabs his gun, it says DNA test confirmed, so but yeah, that was fantastic.
Well, the other thing about her too is that again in some of those scenes where he's like vividly, he's trying to upset her by thinking of pornographic images, and something comes up and she walks up to him. She's like, I can play mind games too.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I love when she, changes from her to mama, with the it's pretty brutal. Again,
oh my God. I'm sorry, go ahead.
At the beginning of the movie, it's like when he first starts to mess with her, she's like, she kind of smacks him, and you can kind of tell that he's getting to her a little bit. But in that scene where she interrogates him mentally, it's all her. She's in complete control at that point. So, and I think it shows the growth of her character in such a short amount of time. Sink or swim, like they even say at the beginning of the movie.
Right.
All right. Anything else things want to throw out? Because I do have, I love the updated look of the characters, the armor, the lawmaster, the lawgiver. I think the changes they made, as much as I like the comics, and because you can see what happened in the Stallone one, that it was kind of bulky, kind of big, and I don't think it works. This this version I like. They kept the badge the same, and they kept the eagle on the shoulders, which is still a callback to the original armor, but I think this one feels more real and more believable in a world like this. So I love how they changed that and made it just as cool. And also I think it's also easier for people to cosplay in these, because I have seen more and more people cosplay in this version of Dredd than in the other one. So
yeah,
I'm torn. I go back and forth on that, because I think from an action film standpoint, you're spot on. It feels more real, feels more like this guy can actually hold his own in a violent situation. But I think part of the reason it works so well in the comics is it is over the top. It's satirical.
Yeah.
It's like dressing up like Homelander, from The Boys. It is
Right.
that over the top thing for a reason. So I think you lose a little bit of that when you make it look actually cool. But having said that, from an action movie standpoint, he looks badass and it's awesome. So I kind of go back and forth.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the helmet's still the same. So at least there's that.
Yep.
All right. Anything else anybody wants to throw out before we move on?
Oh, how about Mama as a villain?
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Jeez.
There's like Joker level psychoticness, if that's a word, in her. But everything, I mean, she takes over 200 floors of a building within 9 months, which is kind of interesting, giving her nickname of Mama, that she has the building in 9 months.
Oh, yeah. I never caught that.
That's great.
Wow.
Oh.
I've seen this movie a dozen times, and it's never even occurred to me. That's fantastic.
But, I mean, the level of violence, the level of just extreme, when the guys are busted early in the movie for moving product against her, what do? Skin them, throw them over the edge.
Right. It's like she didn't have to think about it. It's like, let's just do that.
And I love they only give that brief background on her, but like in this world, you can see how she got to where she is. So like I wouldn't say that makes her relatable in any way, but it's like you understand the progression where this
Right.
woman became unstoppable. Like she's not some femme fatale, because like Lena Headey's gorgeous, obviously, but like there's no like she's her sexuality. Like no, she's just terrifying, outright badass. I love that.
Yeah, I love the description. She feminized her pimp. Like,
Yeah, and then she's standing there with a bloody
blood
mouth.
on- yeah, I
oh
know.
my god,
terrifying.
Oh, it's awful. Ugh. But you get the point.
Yeah.
There's no
she
doubt
got
there.
the point.
Oh, no, she got the tip.
Oh,
No,
Well,
mind.
damn.
no.
Wah, wah, wah. Anyway. All right. Anything else we want to throw out before we move on? Okay.
No, sir, I didn't like it.
It's time for No Sir, I Didn't Like It. These are things we don't like or don't work in the movie. Andrew, you could start.
It's really hard because I don't think that there is a whole lot that didn't work.
All right, well, I got three things, so.
Well, I was watching this with the intent of trying to find that, and like all the stuff that I feel like maybe wouldn't work in other action movies, like cliches or, you know, oh, they happened to, like, here's an example. They happened to escape this awful, deadly situation where they're firing miniguns at them there just happens to be a floor they can jump to from there, which is, from a storytelling standpoint, it felt a little bit lazy, but this is also a comic book. So like little things like that just kind of feel right in this context. So
Well, technically, it wasn't
a
a floor. It was the outside.
Yeah, but I mean, like they could jump onto the roof of a building, like, and it was fine. There was just kids skating, which is also weird. Kids skating on the 40th floor of a roof, like that's weird.
But you know that would happen. Come on now.
So, like I said, all that stuff that I feel like if this were more grounded or realistic, I would probably view as plot holes or things like that make perfect sense in this world. So,
all right,
no, not really.
Okay, John.
I think the only thing that really sticks out to me, and it's a very minor thing, is we get the motorcycle, the
Lawmaster.
Lawmaster. Thank you. I always get it confused with the gun.
It's a lawgiver.
And it's very updated. It's very modern. It's very sleek, and the other vehicles around it don't seem to match the same era. You know, they're kind of rooted a little bit more in our timeline, so to speak. And it's definitely due to budgetary limitations, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And being that it is a more rundown area and stuff, you know, there's going to be some junkers and stuff like that. But
true,
there are a few things where I would have liked to seen a little flash of some more modernization on some stuff that we don't get. And again, it's budget. It's a very minor thing.
Okay. Okay.
But I just, if I focus too intently on it, and being a visual person, I will focus on it. It can take me out of the story.
All right. See, I didn't look at the Lawmaster as sleek or whatever. I just looked at it as functional more than anything. But you know, I see your point.
It's more modern than everything around.
Yeah,
and that's
true.
What I'm getting at. You know,
yeah, I got you.
In the opening, you see the big giant drone flying over the city and stuff like that. So there's a lot of technology and stuff that we don't get within the day-to-day lives of the citizens for whatever reason, be it poverty level or budgetary reasons or both, you know.
Okay. All right.
To your point about the Lawmaster, though, Dayton, I love how functional it actually was, especially like, I know we don't want to compare this to the Stallone one, but that was so ridiculous. It couldn't even turn, whereas this was a real motorcycle, and that was really Carl Urban riding it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Just worth pointing out. They built that. They really built that thing, and he really wrote it.
And then it has crowd control. So it starts talking to the people, please move away, which is always helpful. Okay. So here's a few things that I noticed that kind of, they're not terrible, but they're problems. So after the first drug bust, where we have that great sequence where they blow the door, it's all slow-mo and it's just fantastic. So after that drug bust, they call a meat wagon, you know, because they have all the people for recyc. They have the people that are supposed to go into the ISO cubes, and the meat wagon never shows up. Not until the very end, like which got to be at least a few hours later. Okay. So where were they? Next time we see the cops is when those two show up, after they get that call through. So that's kind of like, wouldn't the meat wagon gotten there sooner? And when they got there, they wouldn't have needed to call because they would have gotten there, realized it's shut down. So that's kind of an issue for me. Now, when the 4 crooked judges show up and Dredd kills the first one, why does he not reload? I mean, he kills the guy, hits him in the throat, and he knows he's almost out of ammo. He doesn't just grab one magazine out of the guy's coat, because in the next scene, he runs out of ammo. It just seemed to me like he's more aware and would have grabbed ammo, and that next scene doesn't work if he does, but that seems kind of sloppy that he wouldn't have grabbed, because after he kills the one guy, he does. He takes everything off his vest. So, okay, cool. So that kind of bothers me. And then as beautiful this movie is, at times there's too much of a reliance on digital blood, and at times it looks pretty digital, and that, it is what it is. I understand it was shot in 3D, and I understand with the use of slow-mo and stuff like that, you kind of had to, but at times it's like, yeah, that's so not real. It's just, it looks too digital, and, I ignore it because the rest of it's just so beautiful, but sometimes the digital blood looks too digital for me. So those are my 3 complaints that didn't quite make sense, especially when you don't reload after you kill a judge who you know is coming to kill you. So
yeah, I'm actually, now that's going to bother me next time I watch this movie.
Well, it's like he figures it out. He, hits the guy in the throat. Now I know he probably doesn't have enough time, and the guy's still standing when the other 2 judges show up, but how long does it take to just reach over and pull one out of his vest and split? That's just all I'm saying.
It depends on how human we want to treat the character of Judge Dredd, because he also is just now processing the fact this judge came to kill him. Like that, he
True.
had only this fight to process that information. So,
but at the same time, the other judges all go, we know who you're fighting and we want 1 million credits. So he has a reputation of, what I mean? So it's, it just seemed like an oops.
That brought to mind something else that I happen to think of, and it relates back to Mama. When they first get to Peachtree and the paramedic is telling them the backstory, Dredd doesn't know who Mama is. And I find that a little hard to believe based on her reputation.
I thought about that too, but he even says, do you realize how often we get a judge up here in Peachtrees? Because Dredd even says we only can respond to 6% a day.
Right, but
so
given
I get your point.
Is
I know, and I get that. So yeah, it is a little suspect that he's never heard of her. So
we could argue this is maybe early in Dredd's career, because he's not. I know in the comics, like he's famous. Like everybody knows. Like if Dredd's there, you're screwed. Whereas nobody knew who he was in this. So maybe it's just early in Dredd. The other cops know he's a badass.
Right. Maybe.
That would also explain why Anderson is, the first real psychic mutant. Because I know in the comics, like Psychops there are several of them. Like
that's true.
So this could just be, very early in, he'll get there.
Yeah. All right.
Fair enough.
Any other complaints before we move on? All right. Cool. We're going to take a quick promo break and hear from some of our podcast friends. And when we get back, we're going to hit Smiling's my favorite and give this film a rating.
Welcome to the All 80s Movies Podcast.
I'm Bill.
And I'm Jason. And this is the podcast where we talk about the blockbusters, the flops, and everything in between from one of the freshest decades for movies, the 1980s. So whether you're a brain, a jock, a valley girl, or a Jedi, we've got some 80s classics for you.
Do these movies stand the test of time? Are we discovering something new? Is there an 80s movie we are finally watching for the first time?
Join us each week as we dive into the cinematic nostalgia that inspired and influenced a generation. From the hits to the cult classics, we'll discuss our earliest memories, favorite scenes, fun facts, and our not-so-favorite movie moments too.
You can find the All 80s Movies Podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. Please subscribe and happy listening.
Why are you smiling like that?
I just like to smile. Smiling's my favorite.
Make work your favorite. That's your favorite, okay?
Okay.
Work is your new favorite.
Fine.
All right, it's time for Smiling's My Favorite. These are some favorite things we have about the film. So first is our favorite scene. Andrew.
There are so many good ones. It's really difficult to say, but I think the one that like really nailed it for me, and it's nailed the character, it nailed the humor without being over the top, is after they've arrested Kay and the building's locked down, and we as the viewer are like, oh shit, this is bad, they're going to die here,
right?
And they're about to be surrounded, and he looks at her, he's like, all right, Rookie, like like he's just continuing with the
assessment,
the assessment, like this is just another day for him.
Right.
And that kind of comes back several times where this, we as the viewer and Anderson as the rookie are like, oh my God, the world's going to end. They're going to die here. And at no point does he ever act like this is anything other than just a Tuesday.
Right.
And that moment where he looks at her and he goes like, all right, well, I'm assessing you. So what do we do next? It's just so perfect. It's funny. It's tense. It's great.
Yeah. All right, cool.
Yeah.
John?
It's kind of along the same lines as Andrew, but when the blast shields finally come down and the hobo is crushed,
yeah,
Anderson looks over there and she sees the blood and she's like, I think it finally hit her like, oh crap, this is real. And like you said, Andrew, Dredd's just like, no, someone's gonna have to mop that up. What do we do next? He's just so cold and not cold's not the right word. He's calculating.
Yeah.
He's at least 2 or 3 steps ahead of everyone else around him, but he doesn't show it because he has no emotion other than anger, basically. But Urban nails this so hard that even if they were to do a sequel now, like we said earlier, he has to come back. If anybody, anybody else were to do this, I can't think of anybody else.
Yeah,
when he separates from Anderson, he turns to tell her, he said, if I don't come back, just thought maybe you don't want to be taken alive.
Yeah.
But the way he says it, it's matter of fact. It's like, I'm helping you out. I'm giving you some advice here.
Right.
But he's like, I might die. You might die. Let's just be real about that and move on. Like there's no emotion in it whatsoever.
Yeah. And I kind of wish in a way we'd gotten a little bit of backstory on him, but the backstory of Dredd is so convoluted and stuff that he's actually a clone and he's been like regenerated numerous times. I think in the comics, he's like 89 years old now or something like that. So that if we'd have gotten a little smidgen of that, it almost would have made sense where it's like, well, if I die, they're just going to regenerate me and I'll be back on the job in a couple of weeks. So, what do I care? But
well, even at the very beginning when Anderson, senses him in the other room.
Yeah.
He even says there's something else there, and
they shut her down.
Yeah. So, which
that's
I think
a
is
good point. I didn't think about that.
Yeah. I think that's a, great nod to, to his backstory.
There's a lot that they do in this movie, and all good sci-fi, in my opinion, does this, where it's like they don't really feel the need to over-explain stuff. Like when they say bodies are available for recyc, like your head goes, okay, I think I know what they mean. They never explain it. They never show it. You're like, there's like a Soil and Green situation. Like, what are we doing here? But they don't bother getting deep into it. You don't have to understand what the iso cubes are. You just understand how it applies to this in context and move on. So I love that they don't explain anything they don't really have to explain.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So my favorite scene, I actually had 2 that I was fighting between. We mentioned the one quite a bit. So I'm going to go back to Anderson's psychic interrogation of Kay, because it's kind of the moment in the movie where we realize that she is strong enough and powerful enough to be really nasty with her brain like that and really mess with him. And, he's so mean and nasty to her and makes a comment like, yeah, you might want to take, use that last bullet on yourself because what we would do to you, all this other stuff. And then she messes with him to the point to where he just leaves a puddle on the floor. And I think it's just fantastic and funny. So yeah, that's actually my favorite scene. But yeah, there's so many. There's so many.
You pair that with when she does finally, get him later on after she's been taken. It's like such a good 1-2 punch. Those two scenes, like, yeah, it's such great development for her character. It's great comeuppance for him because he is just awful. It's great.
Yeah. All right. Favorite character, Andrew.
I mean, there's not really a whole lot to choose from.
No, there's not.
We've talked about it. Obviously, Dredd's a lot of fun, but Anderson's great. She really is. Her character development, her arc is great. So yeah, slam dunk for me.
All right, John.
I love Anderson. I love Mama, but I can't watch a movie named Dredd and not have Dredd as my favorite character. I just can't do it. It's kind of
Carl Urban's in a movie.
Yeah,
he's probably your favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty close.
It's kind of like watching a Batman movie, not having Batman as my favorite character. I just can't.
All right, so since you hit both of those, I'm going with the clan techie played by Domhnall Gleeson. Because it's one of those you're watching like going, wait a minute, he was in Harry Potter,
Okay, so he was in Harry Potter.
Yes,
he's one of the,
Domhnall Gleeson. Yeah,
he was, and then he goes on to be in Star Wars. So
he's been in everything. He was in Garland. After this, he did Ex Machina. He was in that.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Yeah, which is another great flick. I liked him because we find out he's not a nasty person. He's just. He got sucked in there. They, put those, cut his eyes out, put those techie eyes in there. And, it's just, he's a sad character in his free time. He makes things with wire and, he's just so stressed out the entire time. And I felt so sorry.
I just feel so bad for him. Yeah.
Yes,
that's why I love that scene too, because we talked about it as growth for both Dredd and Anderson, but
yeah,
it's just such a satisfying moment that this poor guy can get away.
Yeah, agreed. All right, so this one's going to be fun. Your favorite Carl Urban role? Now I have 3, so I had to narrow it down. So Andrew, you get to go first.
I mean, that's hard. I
know, that's why I have 3. So if you guys take one or two of them, I have another answer.
I gotta give it to McCoy, to Bones.
All right, that was one of mine.
Those movies are far from perfect. I like parts of them, but he is amazing. He plays the character in a way that's like so much like the original, but also makes it his own. And he's funny and he's cool, and he's so good in that.
All right, John.
I've got to go with Billy Butcher. From the I have to.
I can't see that because I have not watched that show yet. It's
really?
I know it's on my list. I know.
He is like Dredd in there to the extreme, but a very sarcastic Dredd.
Nice.
This last season with everything that he went through, and since you've not seen anything, I won't give away any spoilers, but
thank you.
It's great. I mean, he is just over the top. The New Zealand accent is so freaking strong that you almost need subtitles on to understand what he's saying at times. It's just so over the top, but it's awesome.
He is so charismatic in that it doesn't matter that he is pretty much the worst character on screen at any given time.
Oh, he's horrible. He's a horrible person,
but just so lovable while he's doing it.
And he's got this smile. Awesome. You're like, yeah, okay, I'll do whatever you say.
Exactly.
Well, I guess I knew what I'm doing all week. Never mind. So you mentioned Bones and McCoy, and I thought was on my list. Also, Dredd was on my list.
Yeah, for sure.
But it was a short-lived show on Fox where he played Detective John Kennicks in the TV show Almost Human. If you have not seen that show, it's great. It's barely 2 seasons, but he's fantastic in that. It's kind of a mixture of, got a little bit of Dredd in there. You got a little bit of, sad cop. It's in the future. There's a lot of things going on, and it was produced by J.J. Abrams. It looks beautiful, and it's another one situation where Fox was like, this is too expensive. It's like, well, no, duh. You should have known it was going to be expensive when you first signed on to do the show. Great show. He was really good in it. So definitely check it out. So actually, I really love that show, and it was a Firefly kind of a thing. They just were mean to it, and it got canceled. So, but yeah, just so Detective John Kennicks is my answer. All right.
I mean, it should also be pointed out, Lord of the Rings, he was Éomer. He was amazing in that.
Well,
one.
yes, and that was actually kind of his, his real start in feature films, and that's a great way to start.
Yeah, there's worse ways to start for sure.
Yeah, a lot of people saw him.
Yeah,
a lot of people saw it.
Ragnarok, he's great in that.
Oh,
yes,
God, yes.
Yes, he is. All right, so favorite post-apocalyptic film, Andrew. I have two, so feel free to toss out two if you can't decide.
I mean, there are so many. My favorite, I don't know if I'd call it post-apocalyptic, like maybe mid-apocalyptic, is Children of Men.
Oh, that's a great one, though.
I recommend that movie
It's
to
really
everybody
good.
all of the time, always. But I don't know if I could call it post-apocalyptic because it is, like as the world is crumbling. But
it's on the verge for sure.
All
right, John. Oh man. Again, like Andrew said, there's so many of them and there's so many subgenres within it.
Yeah.
One of the ones I really love is I like the Book of Eli with Denzel Washington.
See, I love Denzel in it, and that's the reason I watch it, because I think it's very cool at times, but I think it's a little lacking. But the good parts are really good. And I like the world it paints, the idea that's there. I just think that maybe they fell short, but it's still visually, it's cool. What I mean?
Yeah. Your points are valid, but I also like the fact that it's not this over the top mechanized, robots running everything. I think it would be truer to what we would experience if everything changed overnight. But again, I couldn't think of just one, and that's like the first thing that came to mind. It's like it's also one that I haven't watched in a while, so I might be romanticizing it a little bit in my head, but I still really enjoy it. So
yeah,
there was definitely good stuff to it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, the ending when you go, oh wait a minute, and then you go back and realize all the hints that were there.
Yeah,
it's like, I mean, that was pretty clever. So,
I mean, the only other thing that popped to mind right now is Idiocracy, but that's becoming more of a documentary than a post-apocalyptic.
Yeah, very true.
Unfortunately, after watching Hulk Hogan at the arts,
oh my God,
I was like, were they doing that on purpose? Like they were doing that on purpose, right?
Well, next thing you know, we'll be watering our plants with Powerade because it's got electrolytes.
What plants crave.
That was dark. Okay, so I actually went with two. I went with a fun one and a very serious one. So my fun one is Waterworld. I know it gets a lot of hate, but I love Waterworld. It's just fun. It's a swashbuckler. It's, it's still made its money back, so it's not as big as a flop as everybody wants to say, blah, blah, blah. I don't care. I love that movie. It's a lot of fun. And the serious one was actually based on a book of this title, the same name. It's called The Road from 2009. Viggo Mortensen, based on the book by Cormac McCarthy.
Yeah.
Read the book and saw the movie, and the book is short enough where the film is a very true version. They did a good job translating it over, and it's serious. It's not.
It'll leave you feeling hollow inside. Like I left that movie. I saw that one in theaters, and I left like, why did I do? Like, I want to lay down.
I've got one more to add because you sparked something in me, and I'm not going to go into great detail on it. But Maggie,
I haven't seen it, so I can't.
Oh my God, it's Arnold Schwarzenegger in a dramatic role, and he kills it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Trailers for that one, yeah.
Yeah, it was a sleeper. I think I got it from Redbox one night, and oh my God,
interesting.
It was so good.
I think it was the reason I stayed away from it because it was Schwarzenegger. So
he is the most anti-Schwarzenegger you will ever see him.
Interesting. All right.
Was it Abigail Breslin? Is that who's in that one?
Yeah, she plays his daughter.
Well, she's solid, so that's at least something.
I'm going to revise my answer. A little unknown movie you guys probably haven't heard of. Really deals with the post-apocalyptic WALL-E. I don't know if you know that one.
Oh, you know what? We're covering that in November. So nice tee up. There you go.
That one's becoming a little more true to life than I like it to be.
I love that movie. All right. Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah. I think that's kind of why I didn't put it on my list because we're going to talk about it. But anyway, I love it. Okay, it's time to hit final word and rating for this film, 1 to 5 film reels. So, Andrew, how you want to sum this up? What's your rating?
I'm going to give it a 4. I think it's a great movie. Really nails a lot of the things that make a good action movie. But having said that, there's nothing. I don't know what to point to say like this is what makes this movie stand out above others. I can't really give it a 5. But if you like a good action movie, I'd recommend this every time.
Yeah, agreed. John?
The movie suffered from promotion and general lack of knowledge within the consumers it was trying to reach. But that being said, I'm going to give it a 4.5 because he is the law. You won't fuck around anymore.
I love it. So this one definitely erases the misstep of the previous attempt. You know, it gets that flavor out of there. It understands our characters and the world that they inhabit. So they did that right. I did mention a few things that kind of are little plot holes, but in general, I do overlook them. The score is actually awesome. It actually did make it's not a music genre I'm a fan of, but it definitely fits and actually made my top 7 film score list on an episode we did earlier. So go back and check that out. So, and as we've said, it does deserve a sequel and, justice for Dredd. I give it a 4 out of 5 because it's just freaking good. It just got lost in that year of good action movies. So it's just not fair. So, all right. Well, judges, thank you for spending time with me and dispensing some justice on this film. It's just fun to talk about, and I'm so glad we got a chance to. So thank you very much, Andrew.
Thank you. Any excuse to try to get people to watch this movie, I'm here for.
Oh, agreed. Thank you, John.
Thank you, man. And by the way, you still owe me dinner because you called me that night to go see this, and I had just heated up my meal, and we literally had like 10 minutes to get to the theater before the showing.
I know. Mandy dropped me off and meet you up there, and her and Torrance went somewhere, I don't remember. So yeah, it was I'll get you. I'll get you a shirt at the Extreme concert.
That's fair enough. I want a living color one.
All right, I can do that. All right. Of course, I want to thank our listeners for spending time with us each and every week. What do you think of Dredd? What do you think of Carl Urban? Let us know on social media. If we see what you have to say, then we will share it on an episode and also share it on social media. So hit us up there. Let us know let us know what you think. If you want to help out the podcast, go over to Patreon, and for as little as $1 a month, you can get some exclusive content. Some recent episodes include the Blair Witch Project, and going back a little ways, we did the concert film Pink Floyd Live in Pompeii and Pleasantville. Some current and coming soon episodes include Yesterday from 2019 and the Ralph Bakshi film from 1977, Wizards, which was a suggestion by Andrew.
Love that movie.
I started watching it and it is so weird.
So weird.
So weird. Love it though. Love it. If you are unable to join the Patreon, do us a favor elsewhere, rate and review the podcast and share it on social media. Share it with your family and friends and coworkers because more people is more better. If you have time, October 11th, 12th, and 13th, come join me and Disney John at Sin City Con at Spooky Nook Sporting Complex in Hamilton, Ohio. It's 3 days of board games and RPGs, and it's a lot of fun. A bunch of nerds having a good time, and see the game John and I have been working on for a couple of years. Play to win some games as well. It's just a blast. Some upcoming episodes I want to mention. October we have our Walt Disney World Top 7. We have a category list, and everybody's going to share their picks from each one of those. We have 2 special guests joining us for that particular episode. It's the most magical episode because we actually have 4 cast members joining me. I'll be the least magical person on that episode. We also have the top 7 songs by fictional characters. This should be pretty interesting. There's lots of questions that people keep asking of me, and I'm like, it's not that hard. I promise, it's really not. But it should make for a very interesting playlist. So look forward to that. Do yourself a favor, watch more movies, and remember, physical media is better than streaming. The Docking Bay 77 podcast is produced and edited by Dayton Johnson, recorded with Rode Pod mics, the Zoom PodTrack P4, and edited on Audacity. Opening music provided by Eric Jason Brock. You can find him on YouTube and Bandcamp. Thank you for listening.